wonderful, wonderful opportunity tonight. I'm going to be bringing on my good friend, fellow burner, just awesome all-around guy, Nick Braña. With that, Nick, sir, welcome to Real Progressives, buddy. How are you?
Hey, Steve, I'm great. Thanks for having me. It is a privilege to be here.
Well,
I've been waiting.
Yes, you have. We've been talking. It was so funny. We just keep bumping into each other in different ways. And Ida kept chasing me around. You've got to talk to Nick. You got to talk to Nick. And I was, cautiously optimistic when we met in OI. And then when I saw you up on stage with those guys, took it to a whole new level of respect, just so we're on the same page here. You were very eloquent in what you stated. You were very positive and uplifting, and you were in your element. You were sitting right there with Ralph Nader and Jill Stein. You were in a panel of heavy hitters, and you held your own just fine, man. I was very impressed.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was an honor to sit with them, and the whole weekend was just great. And I kept thinking too, like I really want to discuss what I'm doing, Draft Bernie there, but I couldn't yet because we hadn't had the launch yet. And so I just kind of gave like the background material about, why the Democratic Party is enough, that kind of stuff. But now it's just like guns blazing,
Absolutely. Okay, so you've got a lot of swag now. You got a lot of swag stuff going on there with the Draft Bernie look here. Let me give you a full screen for that. So you've gone the full Monty. Yeah. So tell me. I mean, let's be fair. I'm going to get the white elephant out of the room here for a second. A lot of progressives, as much as they love Bernie, feel a little bit betrayed by Bernie because Bernie sidled up to the establishment. For whatever reasons, and I'll let you get into that because you wrote a really excellent piece and I want to give you a chance to unpack that. But, a lot of people feel very, very betrayed by Bernie. They put their heart and soul into his campaign. They expected him to lead a progressive revolution right away from that nasty old Democratic Party. And instead, Bernie went ahead and did something that none of us could fathom, and that was endorse, not just go along with the flow, full-throated endorsement of what we consider to be the greater of two evils. So with that in mind, you wrote a great piece. Help us understand, man. Break it down. Share your thoughts, sir.
Yeah. No, I've kind of felt the same way, and looking from the outside in, an organization can look kind of like a monolith, but there were a number of people, including myself, that thought that shouldn't happen, and that in fact Bernie should accept Jill Stein's offer. And at the time, it was a really unpopular opinion. But since the election, a number of people have come around. I've seen a lot of people actually coming around to the view that had he done that, he would be president now. And I think so too, because he would have been able to, like the strategy would have written itself in my mind, because he would have stood on stage with these two parties that are just so despised at this point. We could talk about it later, but it's record numbers of people leaving the parties. And on the one hand, he would have had the billionaire. And on the other hand, he would have had the person who's being bought by the billionaire. The politician, like the two sides of this incredibly corrupt coin that have brought us here. And so he could have simply been the one. And of course, because they can't conceive that like a third party is ever a threat, they would have been attacking each other, And so he could have been the one who just rises above the fray like he did pretty much the entire time against Hillary. And he would be president right now, I think, if he'd done that, So the moral in that story is that the establishment parties is not the answer, and there's so much more we could talk about like in that vein. But I agree. I wish that he had accepted Jill's offer for the top of the ticket. I think he would have won.
Absolutely. He would have. Now, the question is, and I think this is a fair statement, our first past the post election system really is a hindrance to third parties. It really is. And obviously, we watched the Green Party, who mounted a valiant attempt. There was a lot of burners, not enough of them, sadly, that supported Jill. A lot of them horribly supported Hillary. My question to you is this. With the challenges that the Green Party faces, with the challenges that any third party faces in both ballot access and just in general, just the way the system is set up with the Electoral College, you name it, what is it about your setup that makes your setup different than the Green Party or anybody else for that matter? Because this is a pretty specific effort you're making here. Talk to me about that.
That's right. This is different from what the Green Party and the Libertarian Party are trying to do. What they're trying to do is they're very valiantly trying to kind of rise up from nothing to take on this corporate duopoly, and beat them. But we just saw, just 3 months ago, a race with the two most hated candidates in all of American history practically, and yet the third parties were still not able to crack I think it was something like 6%. So that tells you that really what's needed is kind of a different approach. The spoiler effect is so effective at really cracking down on that model of building a third party. But there is another model. After Trump won the election, I started thinking, where does the progressive movement go from here, like so many of us did? And I realized that there was a successful model for building an independent party in the United States. And it's what the Democratic Party did. It's what the Republican Party did. And so it's essentially when there's a popular politician, a beloved politician who builds a following in an existing party, in an existing establishment party, by representing a neglected majority. So in the case of Lincoln, for example, they were representing the majority in the Whig Party that was abolitionist, that was anti-slavery. Whereas today, it's the majority that stands against things like money in politics and stands against corruption in government and against inequality. And so when that happens, it's different from what the Green Party is trying to do, in that you bring an existing base, like Lincoln did and Van Buren did, of millions of people that form the party from the onset. And that just overpowers the ballot access. I worked in ballot access. I worked in ballot access in 2 campaigns. So that overpowers the ballot access hurdle. It overpowers the debate hurdle. For example, there was a poll taken about how Bernie would have been doing back in May, I believe, or early June. And it had Bernie in a 3-way race with Trump and Hillary. And Bernie would have been polling at, it had him at about 18%. That's enough to get into the debates. You bring over millions of people, and you blow past those barriers that the establishment has created for you. Those barriers are designed to prevent what this kind of very organic growth that doesn't already bring millions of people to begin with. That's what it's designed to prevent. And the last thing that I'll say about that is that, you look at issue polls, and I covered this in the 2 Huffington Post pieces that I wrote since the election, and progressives are the majority. Like, issue by issue, progressive issues are what the people believe in, whether it's those issues that I listed to begin with, or then you go into things like free college or equal pay or healthcare access to everybody, universal healthcare. And what we're missing is not necessarily an incrementalist approach. It's someone that's bold enough to come out and represent all of those things at once. That's what we really need, because when you get this kind of incrementalist approach, it doesn't inspire anyone. Like, for example, there have been so many attempts to take over the Democratic Party in the past, and people need to be aware of those. People, like, all the way back to Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, even before that, but going forward, to the movements in the 90s against free trade, and then the movements in the last decade against the Iraq War and the wars in Afghanistan, the endless wars. And so all of those ended up in essentially the same manner, is that it always starts the same. There's a lot of energy and there's millions of people, and it collides with the Democratic Party, and it has this big impact. But then the Democratic Party, it kind of like a test car crashing into a shock absorber. But then the Democratic Party, the shock absorber part begins to kick in. And as you actually get into the mechanics of taking over the party, people start to realize, oh my God, we got to take over the DSCC, the DCCC, the DGA. We got to take over the DLCC. What the fuck are all these institutions? I don't even know what the hell is. And so, people get discouraged because in the end, that's not what motivates them, because they spend all of their time fighting these corrupt institutions rather than fighting for what they want to do and what they want to believe in. And so it always starts off big. But then as you actually get into that and you get into the bureaucracy and you get into these arcane rules that the Democratic Party has written in order to take power and rise within the state parties and that kind of thing, and the fact that they use the rules as basically their weapon to marginalize anyone, and they rewrite the rules at will, it's ridiculous. I saw it happen throughout the campaign. So that eventually diminishes that huge amount of energy that you had to begin with. It's left at a little hardcore that in the end is not enough to produce the change that we need entirely. And Bernie taught us on the campaign that the way you create, when he took on both the Democratic and Republican establishments, when he took on both parties, he awoke a revolution, Yes. And what it'll take to do that again, I think, is a new party, and he can do it.
Yes. So I want to talk. You got to turn that volume down. Okay, there we go. I'm not echoing anymore. Woo! All right. So here's the deal. So Bernie Sanders got me involved because of selection of our friend Stephanie Kelton as his economic advisor, both in the Senate and on the campaign trail. So when Bernie came out with Stephanie Kelton, he came out. Now, folks don't remember this because this is not the stuff that normal people pay attention to. Why, I don't know, but they don't. But he came out with a $33 trillion spending package over 10 years. $33 trillion in new spending, okay? It was unheard of. And he was using modern monetary theory economists from James Galbraith to William Black to Stephanie Kelton and others who were advising him and putting together this incredible economic package that is unparalleled. You know what I mean? Even when I look at the Green Party stuff, the problem with the Green Party is that they buy in to this nonsense about positive money, which renders the things they want to do null and void. They can't do it. It's a myth-based economic system. So that's the thing that made Bernie different to me. That's what made me wake up in the morning, go to bed at night, working around the clock. And I want the Green Party to adopt an understanding of macroeconomic reality so that they can do the things they want to do. But you're sitting here talking about drafting Bernie into a new party. Is this a new party, or is this just getting him out of the Democratic Party and finding a home for him elsewhere? Talk to me a little bit about what this means.
So the basic idea is that Bernie has never joined the Democratic Party, which is this kind of hilarious irony now, even though the Democratic Party is essentially kind of using him for marketing purposes, as the face of their party, because they no longer represent the people, but Bernie Sanders does. And so the idea is to get Bernie to found essentially his own party. And I've been calling it the People's Party, but that the People's Party is lowercase. I like that name, but just like the platform and just like the party processes, all of that should be determined democratically in my mind, not by Bernie Sanders, not by me, but by the people who meet at the founding convention, who should write essentially the bylaws of this new party. It's new processes. Like in the Democratic Party, you know, we don't get a vote on who the DNC chair is. It's the superdelegates who get the vote. So that needs to be changed. The party itself needs to be democratized throughout, you know, and that can be done and should be done at the founding convention by the people who are there. Just like the platform should be selected at the founding convention. And I will have an opinion of what should be in there, and Bernie Sanders will have an opinion, and you'll have an opinion. But the fact is that this is supposed to be a real Democratic Party with a small d, you know, and that we're going to actually determine these things. That's the idea. And like I was saying before, this can be something that is different than the efforts that have been done before, simply because there is so much, there's so much agreement at this point. When Lincoln created the Republican Party along with other founders, the country was a lot more divided over slavery than it is today. Today it's like basically unanimous around against the establishment. There's near unanimity around a lot of these issues, like money in politics. You know, you get into like the 90%, you know? And so today it would be a lot easier. The only thing that we're missing is really a vehicle to represent that, to espouse those things in a powerful way and in an unrelenting way, like Bernie did on the campaign, you know, in an unapologetic way. And so that's what this can do again. And the other thing that I'll point out that's just absolutely mind-blowing, it blew my mind when I found it out too, you know, is that Gallup figures show that the Democratic Party has lost about 20% of its following since the election, since early November. That represents almost 14 million people. That is a staggering loss of people. That's absolutely staggering. And I find it just astonishing that has not received any more coverage. And that to me represents the people speaking to us. That is the people, you know, so while we're having this deliberation, you know, about, well, should we dem enter? Should we dem exit? You know, should we found a new party? Should we draft Bernie? While we're having that deliberation, the people are telling us what they want. They're getting the hell out of that party, just like they were before. This has been going on for decades. People have been leaving the Democratic Party for decades. And it picked up in 2004. And now it has reached a new low. And so we have this absurdity now that the Democratic Party, the supposed left party in the United States, is so unpopular in a progressive country that the Republican Party actually has more people who will affiliate with it.
That's frightening. Let me ask you another question, Nick, going back to the previous one, because this, in order for you to be successful, in order for any of this to be successful, we have to get past the hurt feelings that we kind of touched on about 10 minutes ago. And I'm seeing some of the comments, people using the term sellout. I don't like that term, but they're using it. Your article, I want to get back to your article real quickly because you laid it out there. I'm privy to be able to hear some of the things that are going on in your world, and it makes me feel very humbled and happy to be a part of it in any fashion. But let's be fair, you came to some conclusions about the motivation and rationalization of how he viewed his options and how he did not want to be seen as the reason why Donald Trump came to be. I mean, talk to us about what even if you don't know for sure, tell us what your theory is there. Help people through that.
So Bernie lost an election in the late 80s, running for Congress. And he was running with a Democrat, and they were running against a Republican. And as a result of him being there in the spoiler effect, the Republican ended up winning. You know, he actually got more votes than the Democrat. So the Democrat was the spoiler in that race to him. But that made an impression on him. And so he, you know, Bernie has become kind of a lot more pragmatic, so to speak, while being in in the past 25 years, since he was mayor of Burlington. And so I think it really did teach him that he didn't want to be responsible for someone like Trump. He was also concerned about what the ramifications would be for the progressive movement if the progressive movement could be blamed by the media as having been responsible essentially for President Trump. No one can do that, and no one did do that. Except for maybe some lunatics tried it.
Joy Reid.
Yeah, exactly. There's always going to be the lunatics that try, but it got no traction. And the reason it got no traction is because Bernie did everything basically, that he could to sell Hillary Clinton. And that's what's astonishing is that even with Bernie's help, Hillary Clinton could not win.
She was an aberration, man. She was an awful, the worst candidate I have ever seen, ever, and that includes Trump. Ironically, that's scary.
And he was. You're competing against this orange monster clown. How can you not beat that? Literally, an inanimate object. Sometimes inanimate objects or people's pets get elected to silly local positions across the country. Seriously, a cat could have beat Donald Trump. His favorability would have been a lot higher.
Absolutely. So, all right. So, Nick, I want to talk to you a little bit about your relationship with the Sanders campaign, going back to the primaries. A historic campaign, to say the least. My favorite aspect of it, aside from the bird landing on the podium, his speaking at Liberty, etc., was something a little bit more abstract. And that is the idea that not only did he unite all these people, but he also took the Overton window and shifted it by himself to the left. Something that I've never seen done in an election cycle in the history of my life. And I've been on this planet 47 years. So tell me a little bit about your time during this. You were a key member of the staff. You were definitely very involved. Talk to us a little bit about what you did, your experience, and what makes you feel, given that experience, that Bernie would even listen to you. What is that relationship like? Take us from the beginning, if you don't mind.
So there are a number of videos actually out there, which I'm going to be making sure get attention, where Bernie is asked, and others are asked, like Jane, for example, is asked, what about a third party? They're asked about that. And what they say consistently is revealing. When you look at these videos together, actually, you find that what they say is that we're working in the Democratic Party right now, and they always qualify it that way, right now, as in this is what we're doing for now. And both of them have said before that if the Democratic Party doesn't reform, then the action will be in a third party. That's a quote from Bernie, is that the action is going to be in the Democratic Party or maybe a third party. And so, Bernie's been an independent for his entire career. They're aware of the option of doing what I want them to do, of starting their own party. The missing element that I'm trying to bring to the table is simply the show of support, the mass show of support, that actually there are millions of people out there, these millions of people who are reflected in the Gallup poll, who've been leaving the Democratic Party, and showing that those people, that Bernie really wants to engage people in the democratic process. Well, those people, the way to engage them is to actually give them an anti-establishment alternative. They don't have one now. And the Trump voters too, a lot of the Trump voters who just wanted to get rid of the establishment, who just wanted to kick them out. Those people too, as they realize that Trump is no populist, they're going to want an anti-establishment home, and Bernie can give them one, but only if we create an anti-establishment party, like the People's Party that I'm trying to draft into. not if you try to funnel them back into the Democratic Party. That's going against the grain. As progressives, we should be following the people. We should be rejoicing that there is a populist progressive current here. We just need to stop swimming against it like mad. We need to go with it. And if we do that, it's amazing to think those millions of people have left the party despite what Bernie's doing, and despite so many people essentially trying to build the party back up. Imagine if instead of trying to do that, we were actually encouraging them to go to an independent alternative like they're doing naturally. I think we would devastate the two parties. First, the Democratic Party, but soon after the Republican Party, because if we replaced the Democratic Party with a populist party, and our only opposition was this corporate, authoritarian, reactionary party, that would be the end of both parties.
Absolutely. I got quoted in the New Republic right before OI. They had a half-hour interview with me. They took like this much of what I said, but it was an important quote, and I just want to throw it at you. They asked point blank, was the left going to unite at these rallies? And I said, you know what? I don't think so. I think everybody's kind of pulling for their own party right now, unfortunately. You still got the People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front. And the reality is I wish everyone would lay their flags down and come together. The problem is that people that focus on party as opposed to the principles that we're fighting for, they're missing it. I really believe that. I mean, I want to see the left come together. There is no left. If you go around the world, the United States is one big stinking pile of right-wing fascism, even when our so-called left is still not left. I mean, we're still a center-right country at best. I would say we're far right. I'd say we're the right wing of the world. But with that in mind, how do we as a movement come together, overcome obstacles, and pull them in? If Bernie says no, for example, what then? Where do we go? Putting your hopes in one person feels awful. That's tough. That's tough, right? I mean, what do you do with this if that is rejected hypothetically? Where do we go with that?
That's a great question. So Bernie won't say yes tomorrow. I think everybody should understand that. Bernie has this approach, and he's gonna see it through a little bit longer, at least. But the faster that we build kind of a consensus, that we build power around an independent alternative, the faster he's going to switch to that. And so, sorry, what else were you asking about, Steve?
No, you nailed it for the most. I mean, here's the idea, right? What I'm saying to you is this. I worry about our movement, as you do, as Eric Hell does with the Progressive Independent Party, as most of us that are kind of in this little teeny bubble of people that are really conspiring together to make this movement happen with or without. And so the question I have is, yours is very specific. And I support you, Nick. Everything you've done so far has told me that you have got the kind of ideas and the way of thinking through things that just might be crazy enough to pull it together. I mean, seriously, I love it. But hypothetically, it doesn't work out. Our movement can't die. We need this movement no matter whether Bernie accepts or doesn't accept. So I guess my point is this. As we go forward, I have come out very publicly and said, I will never fall in love with another politician again. I will never, ever fall for the cult of personality again, myself personally. That said, this is different. What you're proposing is radically different because you're not doing it just because Bernie Sanders is your hero or something like that. You're looking at history. You've seen how each time a party has been taken over or overthrown or a new party has started, and you're using a blueprint that has been tried repeatedly throughout history. So that's what I like about what you're doing. But I guess what I'm saying is you get all this momentum going. He says, no, what is plan B if there is such a thing? Talk to me about
that. Okay. So no is a rolling process. There's a lot of things that are coming down. When I wrote the article back in November, the first article soon after the election. I said Bernie should do this. He should start his own party. I said a lot of what was going to happen. I said I said the Democrats are not going to resist Trump. I said that that it would take a third party essentially to build sustained energy. And a lot of that, about the Democrats not resisting, about how they would facilitate Trump in the end, that's kind of coming true. And so it's not, you're right, it's not to me about kind of, putting all of our eggs in Bernie, and then if he says no, oh, that's kind of the end of it. It's a lot more about showing that this movement wants an independent alternative. And the cause, the Bernie cause, that flag and that banner is something that we can all rally around easily. As Bernie, who is the closest person to a movement leader that we have, simply by bringing people to that perspective and by showing them that this could be done, by making it real in their minds, by talking about it being Bernie, by using him as an example, and also because of the fact that realistically, because of his status, he is the only one who can do this. There is no one else who can really take his place. But it's not just, it's not just about kind of putting all this blind faith into Bernie. These people who decide that we need an independent alternative, I don't think they're going to waltz back into the Democratic Party regardless of what Bernie says in the end. These people are going to say, you know what, you're right. I think we need this. And if Bernie's not going to do it, we're going to do it ourselves. And maybe that's what we'll realize, Steve, as we try to draft Bernie, is that really we had the power all along.
You are. I'm just telling you this straight up. When me and you met, and I was outside the, where we had the summit that Sunday. I mean, it was. I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, but it was so good. You just were smiling, man. You just were smiling, and it was just like, here's this cherub, this guy who is just beaming with energy and beaming with hope. And it was contagious. I felt almost weird. It was like, I haven't felt this kind of hope in a long time. And here's this jackwad taking over the White House as I speak. And I'm having this moment. And I was like, this guy is friggin' electric. I love it. I want talk to me a little bit about how you have come to be who you are today. I mean, this is not, I'd say 3/4 part thanks mom and dad, but there's some more there. I mean, talk to me a little bit about how you've come to believe and be who you have become today.
So I went to college not knowing what I wanted to do, not knowing what I wanted to study. And I would say, I took a sociology course, and I was just kind of enthralled by it, about how much there was about society. And I would still say that sociology has not been embraced as a field. You would know a lot about that with MMT, and that inspired. That kind of opened my eyes to just this whole field of knowledge that, if it was acknowledged publicly, it would radically change everything that we believe, and it would radically change society. And that's why it cannot be acknowledged. Sociology cannot be acknowledged. It was founded more than 150 years ago, and it still cannot be acknowledged, because then you'd have to admit that actions are that people are the product of their society. And for example, when someone robs a grocery store, it's usually not because that person does it as a hobby, it's because that person is suffering in some respect. And then there's 1,000 other examples just like that. It was there. And so, you begin to realize that this Ayn Rand kind of, philosophy and religion is just not true. It's actually, people are a product of their environment, and that leads them to decisions they make. And so realizing that was big in my life. And from there, I don't want. Like jump in at any time if you want.
Oh no, I'm gonna. Okay, all right. Let's have some fun with this. All right. So Nick, here's the deal. I don't normally make my guests answer this because I am a fire-breathing MMT evangelist. We talked about it early on where I talked about Stephanie Kelton, and that was Bernie's entire economic plan was riding on the back of MMT. I'm just trying to understand for our guy Rob here. Thank you, Rob, for being one of my peeps. Rob wants to know where you stand on MMT.
I support it. Yes, and I love, and you've done a lot in kind of in bringing that to my attention, and I've learned a lot about that in the past couple of years, and so I agree that the way that we create money is just, I mean, it's just absurd. It's counterfeiting. It's legal counterfeiting, and the fractional reserve system that began as kind of as a scam. And continues to be. It's just a legalized scam. So I agree with you.
Okay. All right. See, you are not running for office. You are trying to get Bernie to run for office.
That's
so
right.
Let me just gently correct you so I don't get called to task. In MMT, they have debunked that there is no fractional reserve system. So what they've said is that was mistaught in the school system back in the day, and really banks don't lend reserves. Reserves are an accounting identity that banks don't make any net new assets. That when a loan is paid off, it zeroes out, whatever. But that doesn't matter. The bottom line is that what Bernie has done is by embracing this, he's enabled us to be able to spend in enormous sums to meet the needs. Which is really, you're getting into details that doesn't really matter that much. What Bernie basically said was, I'm not going to balance the budget on the backs of the poor. And that was his slick way of making sure people understood that we're going to go ahead and pay for this with a Wall Street speculation tax. Well, think about it. Wall Street speculation, that's a behavior. Once the behaviors change, the revenue shrinks away. I wonder how he's paying for his plans. He's paying for it with deficit spending, which is a good thing because we need lots of it. And so what Bernie did was Bernie embraced all those things. And so at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Bottom line is that Bernie's plan, the people that supported him, that were giving him the plans and stuff like that, had given him the most robust economic plan in the history of mankind. And that's really all that matters at this point, is that his plan, it would have saved America, and instead we're stuck with what we've got. So we'll leave it.
Even though he was forced to justify, and he tried, to account for each individual spending, here and there. So he didn't really try to explain it, as much as possible, which I'm sure you noticed. He didn't try to go into it, but he tried to account for it. Instead, we're going to pay for it with this or that. Yeah.
He was brilliant. Seriously, I sat there and was so enamored of it because think about this, right? The one thing that you're doing, if you're successful, and I'm hanging my hat on people like yourself and Eric to be successful. I need you to be successful. The thing is that our environment can't wait. We need a planet that can sustain itself and sustain our lives. And the only way we're going to do that is bold action, like you said, not incrementalism. It's going to require bold action. And for our students and to solve income inequality, it's going to require bold action, all of which he put forth. So I am more in debt to you guys for the bold moves you're making. I mean, talk to us a little bit about the efforts that you took to get this off the ground. It has been going on for a while now, and I know I've been hearing about it, and Ida has been reaching out to me for a long time. Talk to me about what it's taken to get you to where you are today.
Well, I alluded to this in the article, in the latest article that I published yesterday, our announcement article on the Huffington Post. I said that I originally published this article, the first one, shortly after the election. I said the Democrats are not going to resist Trump. We need a new party to do that. And Bernie's the best way to do that because that's a successful model for creating a third party. And then I kind of put that out there, and it got, and I didn't have necessarily that much planned or any kind of solid plans after doing that. I just thought someone needs to put this idea out there. And so I did, and what happened after that is that just hundreds of people started coming to me, and started messaging me or emailing me, and asking what they could do to make this kind of a reality. And some of, a lot of them even started offering, how do I volunteer for this? How do I donate to this? What do I do? Like treating essentially this as an organization. And so eventually, as we grew, as there were more of us, who held this perspective, I decided and others decided that we should be the ones to really do this, and that we should launch in a big way, and that we should represent this, and that we should lead it, because no one else was going to do it, and it was up to us. And it was a hard, at first it was a hard decision because there's so many other things that I want to do, and I just finished a campaign, and those things are exhausting. It's just working, constantly. 16-hour days. But I suppose what the movement is all about is people realizing that it comes down to them, and that, no one else is going to do it, and they have to do it. And that's the realization that I had, is that, I thought, well, I worked with the superdelegates and I wrote this article, and there's people around me who agree with this, and so it's got to be us, we've got to do it. And so, and we decided to launch, and we decided to be kind of put it together in a major way. So
I love it. So talk to us about the website. You've got a website up, you've got donations coming up. What all do you have going on? Fill them in on how they can participate.
Yes. So we premiered a website yesterday, and the website, everyone should check it out. It's draftbernie.org. And what it has is kind of an explanation of our plans, which are also in the 2 Huffington Post articles that I've written. And it has 2 major asks also. One of them is a petition that we will deliver to Bernie directly once we have kind of a large amount of signatures, once we have a lot of signatures there. And so I definitely ask everyone to go sign that. And then another thing, another major ask that we have, we came up with this pretty cool idea of what's called the donations pledge. And so this is a donation that people make that's conditional on something happening. So in this case, you can pledge money to the new party that is conditional on Bernie founding it. And if Bernie doesn't found it, then you will never be charged. And so this is, we thought this was something really cool where money can build up, and it's already started to build up. I think it's something like $3,000 now. And that's also linked to the website. And so the donations are they're really starting to pick up. The signups are really going quickly too. And so it's really inspiring. I'd say the most inspiring part is just the messages that we're getting. We're getting messages from people, Steve, who are saying, I was so down on everything, yes. and I didn't believe in anything, and just it was just a full spectrum assault, by the corporate Democrats and Trump against the progressive movement, and these are people who were ready to kind of disengage, and now they're telling us, and they're telling me that they now have found something new to kind of fight for, and something new to inspire them, and that's just emblematic of all the different people out there who are leaving the Democratic Party and who are looking for some kind of alternative, and so if we can pause it at this point, we're still at a time where people are kind of very much in shock about Trump and his inauguration and all the terrible things that he's doing. But as that shock wears off, and people's fight or flight response changes. People are like, oh my God, I'm under assault from so many different directions, and they just kind of duck and cover, when that happens. And that's what's happened before, like during the Bush administration. There were all these incredible kind of anti-globalization movements, which fell apart in a large way because after 9/11, after the Bush administration kind of clamped down in so many ways with the Patriot Act and the wars and all of this. So that's where we are again. And that's part of the urgency of doing this now, is because people can only take so much negativity, before they start to withdraw.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why people withdrew from the race between Hillary and Trump. It was just a mudslinging fest, and nobody wanted to be a part of that. And each one was running as not the other person. And that's not the way to win. That doesn't inspire people. To inspire people, you have to do you have to do what Bernie did. You have to give them something really positive to fight for, not just something to oppose. You need both elements. You need both elements, and it's really that thing that you're fighting for that in your mind, it changes your internal calculus about what kind of situation you're living in and how oppressed you are, essentially. Because it's the comparison between seeing, well, gee, this is how shit is right now. This is how it is. It's terrible. But if you don't have a frame of reference, then human nature and history shows that people will remain in terrible situations. Think of slavery. People will remain in really terrible situations until they have the glimmer of an alternative. And it's that alternative that creates context and creates reference. And then you can see between those two things, that positive alternative. Once you have that comparison, then all of a sudden the alternative changes kind of entirely. Your perspective changes entirely. And you think, wow, we could have that world. We could have the world that you talk about, Steve. We could have a world that is post-scarcity. And I honestly believe that. We are post-scarcity. I think we've been for decades. And so the world could be unrecognizable. As the difference between kind of where we are now on a societal level in terms of human well-being and our potential where we could be has never been greater. Like in this moment, with all of our technology, we could live so much of a better life than we do now that it really is incredible. And I realized that when, after working on several Democratic campaigns and on the Hill, after working on a final one, I kind of said, I have no confidence necessarily in the Democrats anymore. And I took a break for a year and a half. And for that year and a half, I just spent a lot of time reading and kind of writing to myself. And I discovered all kinds of things. Like I discovered simply the level to which we could live technologically if we just embraced that, if we chose to do it. And about how the way in which we do live is a totally artificial construct, which is enforced by this economic system, which is enforced by this social system, this political system, and this monetary system. And when you give people, so the bottom line is when you give people something to fight for, that's what creates sustained action. That's what people really stay for. You can scare people briefly, into something, but in the long term, you can't sustain the level of activity like what's happening now, for example.
I want to talk about, and I think that I'm really the gaslighting. That's way echoing. Can you turn that down a little bit? Let's see. Check. Good. Perfect. All right. So the problem we had is the gaslighting that occurred. Gaslighting, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, that's psychological abuse. Okay. And when people are abused, there's a residual effect that happens to you, whether it be in your domestic violence situations, whether it be in a bad work situation, whatever it is, a bullying situation in school, in a political situation, in our media. when they lie to us, when they gaslight us, when they do these things to us that make us feel like there is no hope, that has a psychological impact on us that directly impacts not just our lives, but our health. And I think a lot of people are still very ill. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. Now, but I really see that a lot of people are very, very ill right now from what has happened. I mean, the spiritual condition plus the freaking physical condition, from blood pressure to psychological issues with dealing with stress. I've seen it in so many people, and we don't have a system set up to really help people deal with this. But we've been through a war. I mean, it really feels like we've been through a war, and we need something to latch onto that is positive to pull us out of this hell. And what you're offering up, Nick, and your perspective, the way you present it, the way Bernie did. I mean, I was driving down the road coming home from work when he spoke at Liberty University. And I was listening to that live stream through my phone, sitting on the passenger seat. And I remember literally just being gut punched with how absolutely overwhelmed with joy I was that he was going into the belly of the beast to speak about a positive message. He acknowledged where they differed, but he spoke about a positive message. And that positive message is what has kept me going day in and day out, regardless of where he is. This is my new ethos. This is my new approach to life. He reinvigorated me. And I think that the healing that our nation has to go through is far more than an election. We have all been seriously gaslit and lied to and abused. And you're offering up hope, Nick. I think this is so important that we refocus our brains on finding hope and fighting for that which we want, not just that which we don't.
That hope is really, it's such a great energy, like I feel it myself. After the election, after the general election, the whole process, the way that the whole thing had gone, was just so crushing, that I really just kind of like took a couple days and did and thought about it. And I would say that the feeling was just such an anger, over everything that had been done. And that anger gave me energy. It fueled that first article that I wrote, that was out of fury. But what has kept me going till this point is what I know is possible, is what you mentioned, is that really I can see, having worked with all of the incredible people, the team of people who are working with me, having spoken to the people who are saying, oh my gosh, this is amazing. What can I do, to help? Like having seen kind of just where our technology could take us, like that, I feel gives me a view kind of over this hill, that we face. Over to the other side of it, over what it could look like. And that's what keeps me going in the long term, and I think I want to share that with everyone, because this idea of just hammering away, like that's what I did, but that only keeps you going for so long. You've got to be fighting for something. And so I really hope that everyone can join us. And what we're looking forward to doing is starting a conversation in the movement. And I think it's going to be a great one. I think there's a lot of people who are looking for something like this. And I'm glad to be bringing them that message.
Well, you did wonderful, man. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. It's an honor. And I'm glad to be able to call you friend, sir. So with that, I want to thank Nick for joining us. Nick, give one more shout out. Let everybody know how they can find you again so that we can get one more blast out.
Oh, so we've got our website up and running. It's draftbernie.org. You can find links to everything else there. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Draft Bernie. We'll be easy to find. Also, check out the articles. There's links to the social media and the website there too. And Steve, it's a privilege to call you a friend too. When I saw you on the panel, also at the OI Summit, I knew that I knew that we were going to get along. I was certainly hoping so.
It's the beard.
It is. That's.
All right, sir.
So thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about this, Steve. And I just I love keeping up with what you're doing too. So.
Thank you. You're welcome to come back anytime. Open invitation, my friend. I want to be a part of helping you. So thank you.
Let's do it again.
You got it, man. All right, folks. Thank you very much. We'll see you later. Steve with Real Progressives. Thank you all for joining us one more time. Have a great weekend, everybody. Join me tomorrow night with Joe Firestone. And then Sunday night, of course, we'll be back with Ellis Winningham. Have a good night, everybody. And